If serial killers could speak from beyond the grave, would they be willing to talk to us?
My name is Julie McDonald. I'm an investigative journalist.
And I'm Bobby Marchesso, an ex-cop and psychic medium.
And together, we aim to have a conversation with a serial killer.
Charlie Starkweather was a punk who took out his murderous rage on innocent victims.
Those people meant nothing to him. Anybody in his way was going down.
Starkweather, are you expecting him to interact with us in any way?
Yes, he's here. If it starts getting just too much, then we need to get out.
Are you here, Starkweather?
Something is over there.
Is there anybody in here?
Come on, do more than that. Make a sound or something. Son of a bitch. What the hell is that?
Charles Starkweather is thought to be one of America's most frenzied and barbaric killers. On the 21st of January 1958, Starkweather and his teenage girlfriend, Carol Ann Fugate, embarked on an 8-day killing spree that left 10 people dead and the whole state of Nebraska living in fear.
With his slicked back hair and love of fast cars, Charles Starkweather was a real teen rebel. On the surface, he was a James Dean devotee with dreams of escaping the poverty of small-town Nebraska. Yet behind that arrogant swagger, Charles Starkweather was a vicious killer who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted.
In recent years, cinema has glamorized his story. The infamous crime spree has been the inspiration for films like Badlands, California, and Natural Born Killers. But far from being a movie hero, Charles Starkweather was a ferocious killer whose murderous rampages will be remembered forever.
This is the story of teenage lovers who became teenage killers.
Charles Starkweather will go down in history as one of the most vicious killers in the United States.
He was a horrific killer, there's no question about that.
We were on the trail of Starkweather's spirit, retracing the steps of his campaign of terror from the rural farms of Nebraska to the open plains of Wyoming. We will investigate Carol Fugate's junior high, where the murderous couple first courted, before moving on to the Wyoming State Pen, a derelict and haunted prison. But which Starkweather would we find? The bow-legged kid from a respectable blue-collar family, or the ruthless spree killer who famously said he always wanted to be an outlaw?
Charlie Starkweather does still haunt Lincoln today and haunts Nebraska.
If he is in spirit form and he realizes he can torment the living, he's going to do it.
Lincoln, Nebraska, 1958. News of a brutal mass killing shocks the quiet city.
He killed Carol Fugate's parents and baby sister, and apparently there was a fight and a struggle at the house. And that's what started the whole spree.
Her family was a roadblock to his relationship with Carol Fugate. And so he simply removed the roadblock.
Most killers would immediately leave the scene. Charlie and Carol stayed in the house for 6 days, with the bodies out in the barn, living as man and wife, watching TV, having sex, eating. I think it was a fantasy world for them.
And so began a chain of events that would see another 7 innocent people lose their lives in 8 frantic days. The 19-year-old was now responsible for the slaying of 11 people.
Starkweather would have continued to kill and kill until he was apprehended or killed himself.
I wanted to begin our investigation by speaking to someone who had first-hand knowledge of this horrific scar on Lincoln's history. I'd arranged for us to meet Dave Hamer, a former photographer for the Omaha ABC television station. Dave had covered all of the Nebraska killings. Would his insight help us to contact the troubled teen spirit?
The Starkweather rampage was certainly the biggest crime wave that ever hit the state of Nebraska. People went to their homes, locked the doors, which is unusual for this part of the country at that time. Schools were closed. Businesses were shut down. There weren't many people on the streets because no one knew where Starkweather was. At one point, I witnessed a milkman, little metal basket of milk bottles in one hand and a shotgun in the other. If Starkweather had been found by someone other than a law authority, he probably would have been killed because emotions were running very, very high at that time.
Obviously, this was a massive story, and being a young reporter at the time, I mean, how did you feel in that situation?
I'd only been in television news about 2 years when this happened. It was a massive story, biggest thing that ever happened to any of us. Having seen 6 bodies, then 9 bodies being carried away, we were concerned about our own safety. I don't exaggerate when I say this was a frightful time.
Starkweather clearly struck fear into the hearts of 50s America. But did he still have the power to do it now?
Yeah, I heard footsteps. Place does funny things to your head.
Look at this.
Got it on the meter's going crazy.
Son of a bitch.
Charles Starkweather was born to a poor yet hard-working family, but like many other killers, his formative years were unhappy ones.
Starkweather was an individual who was very primitive, very inadequate. He was actually oozing with inadequacy.
He was short, 5'2", he was bow-legged, he had a speech impediment. He was the object of ridicule and teasing amongst children. He took a job as a garbage man in a high-class neighborhood, and he was known to shout curses and insults from the truck to the people in this neighborhood.
He just wanted to kill because he was so angry and filled with hatred towards the world itself.
But Starkweather's life took a turn when he met schoolgirl Carol Ann Fugate, a then 13-year-old from the Belmont area of Lincoln.
All these years he had been picked on, and here's someone that actually liked him, wanted to hang out with him and be around him. He really took to doing everything he could to impress Carol. He'd buy her stuff, whatever he could afford. Really made her the center of his life.
To start our paranormal investigation, we would have to return to the beginning of their relationship, before Starkweather had committed his first murder. Whittier School is thought to be America's first junior high, and the school that Carol Fugate was attending when she met her homicidal lover.
So this is Whittier Junior High School, where Carol Fugate spent some of her junior high years. And this was really where it all began for Carol Fugate and Charles Starkweather. This building has never been paranormally investigated before. I think this school's going to give us some idea of how the schoolgirl and the dropout became the killers that they did.
The school is now derelict, a graveyard of memories. The long, lonely corridors are deserted, the classrooms empty. The only signs of life are the pigeons, but we were hoping to find more than just birds.
What can you tell me about Whittier Junior High School?
Well, this actually was the first building that was built expressly as a junior high school in the United States. And it was used as a junior high from 1923 until 1977.
The building's fallen into some level of disrepair, but is it quite similar to how it would have been throughout its history?
Yeah, if you walk through here, you see the auditorium just as it was when it was built in 1923. You know, the spooky gymnasium just as it was. You know, I walked through here the other day and there was nobody in the building except me. And you start to almost hear things. You start to hear a teacher in in a classroom, you start to hear, feet in the hallway, and you turn and there's nothing there. So it's a little bit of a spooky feeling when you walk through this building.
Yeah, I'm hearing stuff down there already.
As the school descended into the gloom of night, we prepared to investigate the Whittier for the first time. Would we find Starkweather here, a spirit stuck in detention, lurking in the labyrinth of corridors and rooms?
Bobby, we're standing on the steps here, just ahead of the doors for Whittier Junior High School. Things that we can discount in a building like this, obviously kind of, radiators banging, any sort of like pipes and that sort of thing.
Right.
But apart from that, there's nobody else here. It's just us.
Here. Already, some of the areas that we've checked out, getting that spooky feeling that kind of you get that there's another presence in here.
Starkweather, are you expecting him to interact with us in any way?
Yes, he's here. And he's just standing over there watching us and very interested in what we're doing. So there's no doubt that it's going to be you, me, and Charles Starkweather going through this place.
I suppose places when they've had such a purpose.
Right there. He's right there.
Who's right there?
Charles Starkweather. Let me show you what he's doing. He wasn't very tall, was he? He's about this tall. Classic James Dean pose. He's got the cigarette in his hand.
You're convinced that Starkweather is here in spirit? Are you simply happy to have him tag along?
I'm not happy to have him tag along. He's going to tag along whether we want him to or not. I would be cautious. I would definitely keep an eye over one shoulder.
I was alarmed that Bobby felt that Starkweather had already attached himself to us. The night had barely begun.
All right, we're in the auditorium right now. And the wind is really howling in the back, so we may get some of that noise on here.
It's incredibly atmospheric in here, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't fail to feel an atmosphere because it's an abandoned place, isn't it?
Is there somebody here with us? What is your name? Is this Charles Starkweather? You obviously had the courage to kill in life. Do you have the courage to show yourself now? Is there anything that you can do to make some kind of a noise or presence so that I know this is you? There's so many noises in here.
Absolutely, I heard footsteps. It was kind of up here, I think.
It was up and then over in the corner. I have to tell you, some of the other things I'm experiencing are lights that are out of the corner of my eye, which are often suggesting that there's spirit activity, but also shadow movement. Like just as you turn and then a shadow just like slinks away into the background. Hello? It sounds like footsteps.
Yeah, it does, definitely. Just right down at the end there.
There's definitely a presence down there.
Why don't I go and stand down there and try that again and see if I can hear it?
I heard footsteps.
You did?
I'm going to shut these lights off real quick.
Okay. It was definitely around here, Bobby, that I heard what sounded very much to me like footsteps.
Hello? Is somebody here? Hello? Is there anybody here? Did you hear that, like a door opening?
Yeah.
Let's go down. Let's go down.
Yeah.
It was was that type of squeak. I mean, it had to be pretty loud. See, I'm hearing it. Did you hear that?
I can hear bits and pieces, but I feel like I need something much more audible.
But the thing is, we shouldn't be hearing any bits and pieces.
Yeah. Well, the side of the old creeks and kind of old building stuff, right?
Hang on. Hang on. Are you hearing that?
There's a freight train and there's the wind.
No. That's...
It sounds almost like I don't know, like a window opening or closing or...
That's what I'm saying.
This place does funny things to your head.
Hello?
Could some of these noises be attributed to the fact that earlier you were sure that Starkweather was there? Do you think, is there an element being played with?
If he could be playing with us, that's totally in his personality. Because I'm also feeling a presence over my back.
I mean, that must have been how Starkweather's victims felt, I would imagine, if they even had a chance to, because he quite often shot them from behind.
Charles, is this you around here trying to make yourself known? Look at this. Look.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that it's going bug wild like that generally suggests that there's activity.
I got it on the meter. The meter's going crazy.
You get huge fluctuations.
Yeah. Right here on the tips of my
Come on, do more than that. Make a sound or something. Son of a bitch. What the hell is that?
I think it's in here.
Jesus Christ.
The shock of the noise had alerted Dave.
Has anybody heard that in the time that we've been here?
I've never heard it come on before.
I mean, let's go. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea what that is, but that noise was absolutely
scared the hell out
terrifying.
of me. Something that strong and that loud, and it's just in the other room.
That was very much a mechanical noise. But the other things that we've been hearing have not been like that.
Those haven't been mechanical. Those just aren't so easily explained away. I mean, this place has been shut tight pretty good. There's very little evidence of anybody sneaking in. We're alone in here, at least for living people.
Why had the generator chosen that exact moment to turn itself on in a building that had been disused for years? Coincidence or something far, far darker?
Well, we just got back from our scare at the Whittier School. The thing that stood out for me was that there was such a level of noise. Footsteps, shuffling, things that sounded incredibly human, went around outside the school and checked all the doors, all the windows are boarded up. They have locks on everything. So if the Whittier School doesn't have somebody rough sleeping in it, then it's a very strange place indeed.
On December 1st, 1957, Starkweather picked up Carol as usual from Whittier Junior High around 3 p.m. But that particular day, the 19-year-old was on edge.
He had been kicked out of his family's home. He was locked out of the boarding house where he was living. He was afraid he was going to lose his girlfriend, afraid he'd lose his car. So he thought crime was probably his only option.
It was here at this gas station on Cornhusker Highway where Starkweather went from teenage punk to teenage killer when a robbery ended in kidnap and murder.
Well, after Starkweather kidnapped Colbert, he actually brought him over to this general area. This is right around 31st and Superior Streets. The two struggled, and then there was a shotgun blast that actually put Colbert on his knees, and then Starkweather went ahead and finished him off with the second shot.
When was the body then discovered by the authorities?
It was within a very short period. It was like about within 2 days.
Was there any sense of what this crime was about?
No. At that time, it was just an unsolved murder. Nobody really made any kind of an association at that point.
So nobody had any idea what was to come?
No, no.
Starkweather wouldn't kill again for 7 weeks, across town in the house of Carol's parents. On the 21st of January 1958, an argument between Starkweather and Fugate's mother and stepfather exploded into a bloodbath.
This was where the first real nasty murders happened. This was where Marion Bartlett was shotgunned. This is where Velda Bartlett was murdered, and this is also where Betty Jean, which is the 2-year-old sister, was killed, and she had been bludgeoned to death and stabbed. They disposed of the bodies. Velda was dumped down into an outhouse. Marion's body was put into a chicken coop, and then Betty Jean was simply thrown out in the garbage. And then they stayed here for like a week, what he referred to as like living like kings, as long as they were here. And as people were coming to the door, they had put a sign on the front door saying that everybody had the flu and to stay away.
And I suppose they must have lived with the corpses within sort of 10 or 15 feet of where they were, as you say, living like kings. You had any sense, Bobby, of what it would have looked like at the time of the murders?
Yeah, just the house, we're not very far away from it at all. We could just walk there again about 50 feet or so. And then in the back was the chicken coop more over by towards the clump of trees and off to the left just a little bit, and then the outhouse off to the left as well.
I've seen photographs that were taken from people standing right here pretty much in the same area that we are, and you'd be impressed to see how accurate you were on that.
I was alarmed at just how cold the facts of this case were, but the deeper we sank into this brutal story, the darker it became.
Did you hear that? Wait. Something is over there.
Our paranormal investigation into the spirit of Charles Starkweather had brought us to Lincoln, Nebraska, the killer's hometown and a city which the 19-year-old changed forever when his murder spree took the lives of 11 innocent people. We were following the footsteps of Charles Starkweather's gruesome tour of death in January 1958. Starkweather and Fugate fled this house in the Lincoln suburb of Belmont 6 days after the brutal slaughter of Fugate's mother, stepfather, and half-sister. The couple headed out of Lincoln towards the small rural town of Bennett and the farm of a man named August Meyer. On the dirt track that led to the farm, Starkweather's car became hopelessly stuck. They walked up to the house on foot.
The farm was a typical Nebraska farmhouse, a large white house. Myers was a bachelor.
Charlie?
How you doing?
What are you doing out here?
Had some car trouble.
He knew August Meyer, felt Meyer owed him money.
He was shot with a shotgun right inside one of the doors.
It would not be long before they killed again. The following day, Robert Jensen and his lover, Carol King, were driving along the deserted lane near to Meyer's farm when they came upon the fugitive couple.
There. You all right?
Jensen was a considerate and polite young man, and fatally for him, stopped to see if they needed any help.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate that. Thank you.
At first, Charlie kind of acted like he was befriending Bobby Jensen and asked him, in fact, if he could, according to the reports, if he could get a ride to Lincoln.
But the atmosphere soon took a dark turn.
Get out of the goddamn car! Slow down. Give me your wallet! All right. Let's go! All right.
He took him to an abandoned cellar of a house approximately 220 yards from where the car was located and killed them both very viciously, and then took the Jensen car back into Lincoln.
He apparently did attempt to rape the teenage girl and mutilated her genitals with a knife.
The bodies of Robert Jensen and Carol King would not be found until the following day. By that time, Starkweather and Fugate were already back in Lincoln, holed up in the home of wealthy industrialist C. Lauer Ward, where they had his wife and maid hostage.
They forced their way into the house, and they tied Lillian to the bed upstairs, and then they forced Clara to prepare some food for them, and they took turns sleeping and what have you. And then when it was all said and done, they still wound up murdering Clara. They murdered Lillian Finkel upstairs. They stabbed her several times with a knife. And then when Mr. Ward came home, there was a fight, and he was shot.
Do you get a sense, Bobby, that they knew their time was short? You know, once they started this killing spree, even though they weren't the brightest bulbs in the box, they must have figured out.
No, not now. It feels like right at this point, it's still full throttle.
From what you see, was Carol a hostage at this stage, or was she part of it?
No, she was never a hostage.
On the 29th of January, 8 days since the killing began, Starkweather's tidal wave of terror spread across the border from Nebraska into Wyoming.
They run across a traveling salesman named Merle Collison, asleep by the road. Charlie taps on the glass and fires 9 shots at this guy, kills him.
Not long after the cold-blooded killing of Collison, America's most wanted man was caught in nearby Douglas, Wyoming.
The deputy sheriff and others were shooting at him from behind, and one of the bullets went through the back of the car and pierced his ear. Starkweather came to an immediate halt.
One of the sheriffs of Wyoming said that was Charlie Starkweather. He was just a yellow SOB, is what he said.
Starkweather's final decision was also a cowardly one. Faced with the choice of the gas chamber in Wyoming or the electric chair in Nebraska, he chose the chair. The governor of Wyoming at that time was opposed to the death sentence. If he'd elected to come here to the Wyoming State Penitentiary, he may still be alive today. And it was here at the prison in the small cowboy town of Rawlins that I wanted to continue our investigation.
Bobby, this is the last stop on the paranormal side of our investigation. This is Wyoming's original state prison. It's not used for that anymore. Now it's used more as a museum. I mean, just pulling up to it, I think the kind of gothic look of it, it looks absolutely terrifying.
It is, and you certainly get a definite presence from it. We'll have to go inside, take a look, and see if we can draw forward Charles Starkweather. But you know, it's going to be a little difficult because you're pretty much walking into a degenerate soup, but I can almost guarantee that there would be some type of activity in there tonight, and you might want to keep an eye over your shoulder.
The old Wyoming State Penitentiary was in use from 1901 to 1981. Now a museum, the former prison has 3 cell blocks. The original refectory, guard towers, and a death house, which is host to the gas chamber.
So Tina, tell us a little bit about the block that we're standing in now.
This is cell block A. This is our original structure. It was opened in 1901. We used it all the way until the end, 1981. Our cells are 5 by 7. Until 1950, whenever we're overcrowded, we'd have 2 people to a cell.
What were the conditions like?
The word penitentiary comes from penance. So in the early years, the philosophy was that they were here to serve time. When inmates were in severe trouble, the guards would chain them to the punishment pole and they would whip them with rubber hoses for punishment. That went on legally until the mid-1930s.
Throughout the last century, the penitentiary has been submerged in pain, sorrow, and extreme violence. Nowhere more so than the shower block.
This was a prison shower. We had only 10 shower heads back here that allowed to 40 inmates at a time to use the showers. This is where all the bad stuff would happen. This is where prison initiations would occur. This is where if you had a grudge against another inmate, you would carry out your grudges. And before the officers could come in to break up the problem, it was usually over.
How did they manage to get their weapons into the room here?
There are stories of inmates who would hide razor blades inside the soap, and when an inmate used the soap to clean themselves, they would get cut.
So with all of that type of activity that takes place, I would think that this would be a pretty active paranormal spot.
We've had a few investigations, and this is usually the area where we hear more EVPs, or we've seen more orbs on camera. A lot of people come in just on day tours and say that they feel funny in this room. A lot of people don't like being in here.
The other area of the prison where activity has been reported is the death house, where prisoners were either gassed or hanged for their crimes.
This is the top part of the hanging chamber. This was a trap door. We had a hydraulic system of hanging, which was weights and water. So when the inmate stepped out, his weight would set the scale and the bucket of water would start emptying out. When the bucket of water emptied out, the trap door would spring open, the man would fall through. The window was put in as his last view.
This room is just, it's just giving off the most incredibly sad vibes, isn't it?
And then this, of course, is our gas chamber.
So if Charles Starkweather had have been executed here, it would have happened in that chair.
Right.
As the sun plummeted from the Rawlins sky, we prepared to investigate the Wyoming State Penitentiary. Tonight, it would just be Bobby and I walking the lonely corridors of the prison. But were we alone? Would Starkweather choose to come here in death, a place he avoided in life?
So we're losing the light a little bit outside, Bobby. It's becoming a different building already.
And I can already feel the activity starting to heighten just a little bit as we are preparing to do what we do.
So with all the instruments that we've got here, again, it's that hard evidence that we're looking for, and we need to be level-headed here because we're talking about a building with a great deal of atmosphere and history. So we need to make sure that we separate that from something genuinely paranormal, which is where these...
There's a lot of old stuff in here, things like windows banging and doors that are affected by the draft. Those things we're going to be able to debunk.
Is there anything we need to be aware of in particular that I need to think about when we're going around?
Well, you have to imagine it's a lot like it was back in the day. Now you don't even have the bars to protect you. If it starts getting just too much, then we need to get out. Okay, so this is the shower area. Hello? Who is still here? If there's activity or any type of spirits in here, you need to make yourself known. I feel very uncomfortable having my back turned. Something is over there. Can you make that louder, please? Hello? Who's here? Hello? Hello? Did you hear that?
Mm-hmm. Sounds like people talking far off in the distance. Is that the same thing you're hearing?
I want to rush over there, but I don't want to just scramble.
Okay.
Because I don't want to scare it away. But let's go that direction. Wait. Shh. I'm here. I'm over there. Hello? Who's there? Talk to me. Not hearing it now.
They were definite voices.
Yeah.
It sounded like, well, it sounded like one man, I think, rather than a conversation.
Right.
Just walking down the corridor away from Bobby. It's pitch dark in here. The cells are on my left-hand side. We thought that we heard voices coming from here before, so I've suggested that Bobby calls out and I will hang out here and see if I can hear anything.
Hello? Is there anything you'd like to say to Julie? Can you hear anything down there, Joel?
The odd creak or, you know, it's pretty silent.
Hello?
Just taking a walk along to the end of the corridor. It's hard to describe how pitch dark it is in here. The only thing that's keeping me company in here so far is my enormous shadow.
Charles, you've been watching us since the Whittier School. Are you here now? Are you here, Starkweather? Okay, what was that? Is anybody here? Real strong feeling. My flashlight's gone. It usually means that they're trying to draw energy.
This is a totally different part of the prison. This is cell block B. And we've heard indiscriminate noises. Now we've got the wind blowing outside. That's quite chilling. Okay, that was super weird. I'm just trying to figure out what that was, but I don't know. I think it might sound ridiculous if I say scream, but there's something in here. To all intents and purposes, from outside of there, it looked like somebody lying in here.
The body had given me a fright, but our night was far from over.
What was that?
Hello?
It's kind of moving all around me.
Is there anybody in here?
Our search for the spirit of notorious serial killer Charles Starkweather had brought us to Rawlins and the Wyoming State Penitentiary. Our paranormal investigation had already strayed into dark territory.
Something is over there.
There's something in here.
But now we were stepping up our effort to contact the maniacal killer. We separated. I headed alone to the refectory, whilst Bobby went to the death house.
I'm standing in the exact spot that a prisoner would have stood. You can see above me the original hook. There's a platform that I'm standing on now. Is there anybody in here? Can you give us a bang or some kind of a knock and let me know that you're here? What was that? Hello? Can you do that sound again, please? It's kind of moving all around me.
Is there anybody in here? Hello? There's some sort of noise. I can't really quantify it, just on the other side of this window here. As far as I know, it's not raining outside. It's pretty weird.
I was now deeply unsettled, but it was impossible for me to divorce the fear of the dark from anything truly paranormal. Bobby had one final roll of the die in his quest to converse with the mass murderer. He wanted to conduct an EVP session in the darkest place imaginable, the gas chamber. EVP stands for electronic voice phenomena, believed by paranormal investigators to be a method of spirit communication.
Sit down. Hey, Charles, if you're here, come forward. Were you sorry for anything that you ever did? Were you purposely manipulating Carol?
It was at this point that Bobby believes he began to receive responses to his questions.
Were you purposely manipulating Carol?
Could the voice be saying,
How about when Carol turned on you? That had to have gotten you angry. And this is your last chance, your last hurrah. Just even make a thump or something to make me keep going and trying to talk to you.
Bobby believed the response said, Our investigation at the Wyoming State Penitentiary was over. It had been a long and disturbing night.
We just got back from the original Wyoming State Penitentiary. If the walls could have talked, and they did occasionally, we heard noises, we heard voices, none of which we could explain rationally. But it literally was calling with history and atmosphere. Are there paranormal things going on there? That's not something I could say for sure. Were there strange and unexplainable things at the state penitentiary then? I think we definitely experienced some of those.
The following morning, and bathed in the warm glow of the Wyoming sun, the prison no longer seemed as foreboding as the previous night. But our investigation wasn't over yet. Bobby called me to his room to hear one of the EVPs he'd captured during the night.
So what have you got to show me?
Well, some pretty interesting electronic voice phenomena from sitting in the gas chamber, sitting in the chair, trying to call forth Charles Starkweather, and this is what I got.
Okay, that's quite compelling. Do you want to play it for me again? Okay, I can hear the walking bit.
To me, it says start walking. So I'm asking if there's anything that anybody wants to say, or I'm out of here, and it says start walking.
The EVP was quite persuasive. Could it really be the voice of the teenage killer? Our journey had come to a close. Bobby was convinced that Starkweather was with us the entire investigation, tagging along for the ride. He felt sure he'd smelled this teen spirit.
He's right there. He's got the cigarette in his hand.
For me, having traveled his trail of death, I felt a deep sense of loss. The loss of life of the people he so brutally killed, but also the loss of innocence of an entire nation.